Oregon environmental regulators have fined UPS nearly $71,000 over problems involving underground fuel tanks at two of its Oregon facilities. The Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, or DEQ, says inspections at UPS sites in the Dalles and Tualatin found multiple violations involving underground storage tanks. Those are tanks buried for companies to use to keep diesel or gasoline on site for fleet vehicles. DEQ says some of the problems included a damaged spill bucket, a leak detection sensor that wasn't set up correctly, and required testing and routine inspections that weren't done or documented. The agency says those rules are meant to help prevent fuel leaks and catch them quickly if they happen. DEQ also says there wasn't a trained operator on site as required. UPS can appeal. We reached out to UPS twice over the past 2 weeks for comment. We have not heard back.